Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TimeformUS Pacecast, the September 6th edition. Today, I'm joined by my co-worker at Daily Racing Forum, Marcus Hersh, as David Aragona takes some time to wind down a little bit after the very busy Saratoga meet. It was that thing is a marathon, I have to say, so I will definitely not fault David for that. Especially with having to make all those morning lines he did over the last weekend with about 1,000,000 2-year-olds running. But good busy time. Sad to see it go. We still have Del Mar for another week. But before we dive into those, Marcus, where are you hanging out these days, and what tracks are you covering?
Well, I'm in Chicago as per usual, and it's been a brutal week because I'm doing the analysis for Colonial and Kentucky Downs. And yeah, those Kentucky Downs analyses take it's a lot of work. Yeah, so I'm doing those things and keeping half an eye on Horseshoe, Indianapolis, and then Europe, which has been pretty quiet recently. And those are the main tracks I'm covering right now.
Well, I don't envy you because I know that those two tracks are a bear to handicap. So both of them in their own right are pretty tough.
We got 2 days left of Kentucky Downs. I am right at a $2 ROI for the meet, so I've done well there.
Yeah,
I'm
you can
sorry,
do that.
Colonial. At Colonial,
Ah,
Kentucky Downs has been. I could not be more clueless. I don't feel like I'm clueless. I just feel like it's basically impossible a lot of the time.
when I look at the results, I feel the same way. Sometimes I feel that way before the races and after many of them are.
Yeah, no, I mean they have had so many maiden races too, and it's just a guessing game a lot of the time.
One of my tenets of handicapping is when horses run back from Kentucky Downs, I always view it as a positive from a conditioning standpoint, but I kind of flip the results. I assume the horses
Exactly.
that ran well there won't reproduce that form elsewhere and give horses excuses. And it usually pays off. Not always, but
I do exactly the same thing. And also, when handicapping there is no place that I give more weight to past positive or negative results, especially positive. It's remarkable how many horses that run well once will run well again.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to have the luck. I haven't mentioned it, but this Friday, we are going to handicap Kentucky Downs on the forecast. And I say we, not you. I wouldn't stick you twice with having to be with me. But I'm having a good friend of mine who is the track announcer there, Larry Colmish, join me. So
Oh,
maybe
great.
he will
Well,
have some insights, probably more than I will when it comes to
I'm pretty sure he
track.
watches all the races.
He does. He complains about his sight lines and how hard it is to see.
Oh, it must be
But he
brutal. It's hard. Our sight lines are bad watching from the screen as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something. So before we bore the people too much, I'm sure most people would want to start with Flightline. And before we get into the speed figure, which I made for him, and of course we can always talk about Andy Byer's speed figure as well. Uh, I just want to know what you thought watching the race and what did it do? Because I know me, it blew me away. And I'm a pretty jaded guy who thought I'd seen it all, but I haven't seen a race like that in a long time.
Oh no. I mean, it was I mean, I watched it on my phone by myself and my I think my jaw dropped like really like when he started going on with it from the half mile pole. And I mean, the thing is he just seems to do it so easy. It doesn't even look like he's working at it. Um and he just I mean to disappear off the screen like that. It was It was it was probably the best race I've ever seen a horse run. And I mean, the form speaks to it. Like Country Grammar, I think pretty much ran his race. He beat Royal Ship by 7 lengths. Um, I think the Royal Ship Express train, that kind of all works out. They kind of ran about where they should have. And and the horse that won the Dubai World Cup was beaten 19 and a quarter lengths. It's an absolute joke. See, like it's just that he's such an unusual horse, as you know, Craig. I mean, because now looking back, the sprint races, like he was just getting warmed up. I mean, most of the time when you've got a horse that big and that brilliant, that's that fast, they have efficiency issues And the farther they go, the more inefficient they get. And so there gets to be a point, maybe a mile and an eighth, where that all catches up to them and it starts to collapse their ultimate performance level. But he just did the same thing at a mile and a quarter as he did at 6 furlongs. It was like he just reproduced the race only over 80% more distance, and that's clearly a generational talent to be able to do that. Now, I don't know. We'll see what happens going forward. I mean, the horse has been raised so sparingly for good reason, I'm sure. I mean, he needs a lot of time, and they finally. So it's one thing to let him run, and I know they don't let him run ever. To let him run for 7/8, but to let him run like this for a mile and a quarter, let's hope that he comes out of it in good shape, and we get to see him again before too long.
Yeah, I think everybody's hoping for that. I assume he's going to train up to the Breeders' Cup Classic. I
Oh
do
yeah,
think I heard that. And
yeah,
I'm with you on this race, and it kind of leads into the speed figure discussion. As you probably know, I gave him a 152, which is the highest speed figure I've ever given since I've been at Timeform US, which is about
yeah,
8 years now.
yeah.
And
It
it's
makes
not just
sense.
the highest, it's the highest by a lot. I believe the previous high was, at least since 2012, was a 142 from Gun Runner. He had run 140 or so 3 different times in his career, and this one was just one it's almost one you're afraid to put out because you think people are going to give you a hard time. But I actually don't make the figures when I for Del Mar. When I did a quick glance. I don't like to influence my assistant who does these. And to my mind, it was about a 153, which actually the final time is what it came out to be. We actually adjusted it down a point by our algorithm, but I just don't see any way around it. I'm totally with you on Country Grammar. I was dumb enough to pick him as my selection
No,
on the
I don't.
forecast.
I don't think it was that dumb. I mean,
Yeah, he was one
some
to
people
five.
might
I mean,
say that they saw this coming, but there's no way you see this coming. Come on.
no, I mean, I thought he was worth going against at 1 to 5. In hindsight, he obviously wasn't, but I would use that handicapping again.
But that doesn't matter. That hindsight doesn't matter whether he won by anything or 19 and a quarter. He had beat an off form horse going a 1 turn mile, and he's going up first time 2 turns and a mile and a quarter, and a horse who can get hot. I mean, sure, it looks bad in retrospect, but you don't get to do things in retrospect.
Right. You certainly don't. And the way I went about the speed figure, kind of after my assistant sent the worksheet back and I processed it, and I just wanted to give it a look and see how conservative I would be. And one of the things I did was just remove Flightline from the race and use my projections like Country Grammar won, Royal Ship was second, a distance second, and it all still fit right in line with the other races on the card. So I have no qualms with the 152. The visual certainly matches it. Who knows if he'll run that again? I tend to doubt it. I mean, we've seen it once in a race like this, maybe not since Secretariat. So, it wouldn't be a shocker if he comes back and only, and I'm using air quotes, runs a 140. But there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And just a massive performance. It's hard for me to see anybody who was behind him really challenging him next time. The gap was just too big. But
There's
as you say,
no one in the world can challenge him at a mile and a quarter on dirt if he's going to run anything close to that. There's not even
right.
close.
And we saw that even in the Met Mile, nobody could challenge him. In the Malibu, nobody could challenge him. He won him with such disdainful ease. So uh,
You don't do Dubai, do you?
I know we leave that to time for him.
Right. I wonder what, I mean, Arrogate's Dubai World Cup was probably the most, he might not have run that fast because he came from behind and he doesn't have that kind of speed. But I mean, he crushed Gunrunner, who probably didn't run his very best number. I think he got better after that. But I think that had been the previous best race that I saw from a horse, and it ruined Arrogate. He was never the same afterward.
Right. And I actually did tinker with a figure back then. I want to say it was maybe 135. I think some of that was the trip, as you said. He kind of got left a bit. So he was never going to run a figure like this, but
Right,
it
it
was
was impossible. Yes,
right, right. And it was certainly a huge race. So,
but that's
um,
what makes this. That's what makes this horse. I mean, an Arrogate did this kind of thing to a obviously much lesser extent in the Travers when he was able to show his speed. But It's the horse that can show their speed and that can set their own tempo that can really break the clock.
Right. And the one underrated thing, if it's possible for Flightline to have an underrated thing for me, is he doesn't have to have the lead, as we've seen. He wants the lead. I think you do have to restrain him a little bit, or he's just so fast he's going to run off on you. But he does take to the rating. We've seen it twice where he didn't break particularly well in the Met. He was clearly being restrained down the stretch the first time at Del Mar on Saturday. So it's not even like, if he's in the race with Life is Good in the Classic, which is the matchup I assume everybody would hope to see because we know that one is
Except
fast.
maybe Life is Good. He might not be hoping
Right.
to see it.
But I just don't think it matters because it's not like he has to get up there and
Exactly.
pull.
I can't rate Life is Good anywhere in, like, even in the same category. Like, it's a different tier of horse. He'll be a good target though.
He will for sure. He will set a good fast pace. I'm sure of that. I don't think he's capable of setting a slow pace if he wanted to.
He's not. You're right.
So I don't want to go too long on Flightline. We could probably
Yeah,
spend the
well,
whole show
it's
on
hard
him.
not to, like the
Right.
best, like it's seeing like the best race you've seen in decades. It's hard not to talk about.
Right, and especially when we don't get to see him that often. So the times you do get to see him, he's
Yeah,
probably
I
one of
envy the people
the
who
top.
were there in purpose. It would have in person. It would have been quite something to witness with your own two eyes, I think.
Yes, and I'm looking forward. I haven't seen him. I will see him at the Breeders' Cup. Hopefully, I'm going to make it,
Me too.
God
Knock on
willing.
wood. I look forward to it. Hopefully he does too. Don't let us down, Flightline.
Yeah, you keep keep him in training there. Uh, all right, so they ran some other big races at Del Mar as well, a little bit overshadowed by this one, but immediately after, there's particularly a lot of turf races, and I guess the biggest one would have been the Del Mar Handicap. They didn't exactly go clever with the names, a lot of Del Mar, but the Del Mar Handicap at a mile and 3/8 for older horses. What did you think of that
Phil D'Amato, the Chad Brown of the West Coast, really. I don't. I mean, I just think all these horses. I'm sorry to paint with a broad brush, but it's a. I mean, it's an intramural affair out in California right now. Um, the one I think really good turf horse out there who didn't even run, Count Again. Although we'll get to the Del Mar Mile, that horse might be okay. This race, I mean, Masterpiece. I'd say he pretty much ran back to his comeback race, which was pretty good. I mean, I think he's a solid horse. Like if you put him on an open market, I don't think he'd be competitive in a Grade One race anywhere of any legitimacy. He could finish fourth or fifth. But I will say that to for Gold Phoenix to win like he did off of that pace was pretty impressive, um, because they really went slow, and I mean some horses do fine with that. He's lightly raced 4 year old. He may have more to find. Just I mean I actually I need to look and see what number did you give him even.
He got a 121, which was about what he had run the last time, or not hit. The winner actually, improved. I should say he had run a
Yeah,
112 last
the
time,
other
and
horse ran to form, right?
this was a career best. Right. Masterpiece basically ran the same. He ran a 121 as well. They were only a head apart. And I wonder how much credit do you give to Flavian Pratt? It's almost, at least for me, I forgot how much he just is better than everyone else out there. And that's no knock on him. He clearly gets really good horses. But he was a difference maker to me once again. He went out there, obviously won on Flightline, but he won a couple of the big turf races as well. And I do think the ride helped. It wasn't like he was on three different
Oh
flight
no,
lines.
he's fabulous. He's I mean he's just like an exceptional jock. He and I mean I don't know. I love the guy. I think he does. He's smart. He's intuitive. He's got a great feel. He's he's a brilliant jockey. He probably did make all the difference with this horse too. Anyway, I mean, improving 4 year old. Probably I doubt we'll see him outside California. And if he did venture outside California, I don't think he could win off a slow pace like this. I mean, I guess the fact that the pace setters, I mean, Master of Foxhounds has been not very good for a long time now. and Tis a Magician, like he's a grinding mile-and-a-half dirt horse. He doesn't quicken. So I suppose like when you look at how when a slow-paced race is won by closers, you have to take into account who was setting the pace and their ability or inability to quicken at all.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's one of the very first things I do because it can affect the speed figure as well. And in this case, those two really they're not
No,
very
that's
good.
it. I'm sorry, they're
They're
just
not.
not.
Yeah, they're not grade two horses, and I don't even know if Gold Phoenix is a true
I don't
grade
know
two.
either. I mean,
I guess he's
if you just look
borderline.
at the raw final furlong, they did not or even the 3/8, they didn't finish that fast.
Right, and that course is quick too, and that's the difference in California racing as well. They do set quicker paces. Like we're talking about, it was a slow pace. It was a slow pace, but it was extra slow for
Absolutely.
California because we normally, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of really quick paces out there compared
There
to.
was another one too in the previous turf race. The Del Mar Derby also was a very slow
Yeah,
tempo.
let's move on to that one. We'll jump around here a little bit. The Del Mar Derby. This was one we handicapped. David and I both kind of did wind up liking the winner. I liked that he had a pace advantage. David liked his breeding for the turf. It was his first try on the turf, but again, it's one of these. You only got a 110 speed figure for me. That's not going to win many races outside of California, and I hate to be down on California. They have some nice horses, but they are definitely a cut below on the turf, and I think we saw it here as well.
I thought the best horse going in was Balnikov, and I think he's still the best horse. He easily, to me, ran the best race. He had about zero chance the way these horses did come home. I mean, they were 3.3 seconds faster than the older horses, and he made up a lot of ground. He was much, much too far back, maybe needlessly so. But I don't think he's a spectacular animal by any sense. But I do think that he's out of this race. He's got like his baseline is the highest.
Yeah, I have no argument with that whatsoever. I mean, the top three in this race were one, two, and then three or four all the way around the track, and he came from
Yeah, it was a
pretty
parade.
far back. But I don't want to overstate it for Balnikov. He is what he is.
I don't either.
This is not a good group. We're going to talk about what I think is a good 3 year old when we move to Saratoga on the turf. But speed figures are definitely a little different. One thing I'm not sure how much you pay attention. I assume you do. But there does seem to be a gap where, to me, where on turf it takes the 3 year olds longer to catch up. It's more of a, you mentioned a lightly race developing 4 year old in the last race we were talking about. It seems like to me the turf runners are almost a year behind when it comes to dirt development. And that by now the dirt horses have caught up and not so much on turf.
I they're getting there. They're catching up. Yeah, and if you look, I mean, I don't want to like just default to Europe, but I do think that there have been people like observing things over a great period of time. And while they may not have been making speed figures, they were watching the way horses developed through their different years. And like, I mean, take the arc. Like the 3-year-old fillies are still getting 15 pounds from the older male horses. The 3-year-old colts are getting like 8. Okay, so they're like, and all I'm saying is that that is just the system that's developed through generations and generations, speaking to exactly what you're saying. Without the weight, I mean, these horses going the farther you go, maybe even more so. The turf horses can't compete. They can't compete without getting substantial
Yeah,
weight.
I would totally agree. And this, particularly when we talk about like the arc, that 15 pounds 3 year old fillies are getting is probably more than that when you consider the distance and that there's usually a lot of give in the ground. So the weight probably has even more of an effect than it usually. So don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that race. Not sure we're going to see any of these horses try the Breeders' Cup. If they did, I don't think they'd be very successful.
No, this is they're going to be in the Hollywood Derby, the top ones.
So you mentioned earlier the Del Mar Mile, the third. I can barely keep those straight. They ran three grade twos that start with Del Mar. But the
Yeah.
Del Mar Mile was
Yeah.
probably the best. You mentioned you like the winner of this win. What impressed you here?
Well, I mean, we do have to take into account that this was an absurd. The race could not have set up better for this horse. I actually, going in, I thought I liked the other Phil D'Amato horse, Cathkin Peak, who has gotten in trouble so many times and pulled too hard in so many of his races, but he's just not very good. I mean, looking at the way he ran in this race and then putting it together with what I saw in the past, is like he's just there's sure he's had trouble and sure things have gone against him, but there's not much more there. The second place horse, a radio, he was done the last 16th of a mile. He was putting his feet in the ground. Um, and Hong Kong Harry Pratt again, the timing was perfect. He sliced between horses at like the 4.5 and engineered a perfect trip. But I guess the one thing I'll say is I do like the way the horse traveled. I don't love his stride, and he seems kind of skinny and reedy. He's not a powerhouse, but he did travel really well throughout the entire race and finished it off well, albeit as I mentioned, with an absolutely dream setup. But he has only raced a handful of times in the States. He's a 5-year-old, so take that into account. But I think I don't think he's going to win the Breeders' Cup or anything like that, but I think he's okay. I mean, out of these horses, if you said he was going on the road and running against like a real group, I would not just throw him out
Yeah, that
automatically.
makes sense. And as you say, my one reservation is the trip. It was a perfect setup, perfect timing, as you mentioned, by Flavien Pratt again, which seems to be his strong point. He just times these turf races so perfectly. It is a race we have most of the fractions coded in red, saying the pace was fast, unlike the other couple turf races we talked about. And I'm with you. I really wouldn't want anybody else out of this race other than Hong Kong Harry. And he does seem like the kind that would be dangerous if he gets. He just is going to have to get some pace though. So what else did we have at Del Mar? We had the return.
You had one more listed, the shared
Yes,
belief.
I only want to talk about very briefly.
The classic California fast, early, slow. I mean, the leaders fall down and they're not finishing at all, and no one gets close to them. I've seen that too many times, and they can just keep those races to themselves. And I mean, I don't know why the winner was 21 to 1. He didn't look like that kind of price to me, but I didn't like Armagnac and Newgrange going in, and I didn't even know much about High Connection, and I don't think any of these horses are graded stakes horses in a true sense of the word. Maybe a grade 3, that right weak spot they could pick
Yeah, I
off.
would totally agree. The only reason I actually even mentioned this race was because it was a key part of making the Flightline speed figure. I mean, I could have made the Flightline speed figure just on the Pacific Classic, but I don't want to pretend there wasn't another route. And if you open up the Timeform US charts or the buyer charts, and I know that we both use the same variant for both races, uh, I think you'd have a hard time arguing with the figures that were given.
Exactly. That is what that 137.69 jumped off the page to me in vis-a-vis Flightline. I mean, that really, regardless of what limitations these horses might have, and they do have limitations, it is what it is.
There were a couple races on Sunday, and I will admit I don't have speed figures for them yet. I will probably get them later today. We're recording this on Tuesday. I'll post them on Twitter as I always do. But one of the interesting returns for me was Lieutenant Dan coming back in the Green Flash. We hadn't seen him since the Breeders' Cup. I'm going to assume he ran about a 120 speed figure because he basically always runs about a 120 speed figure. He always seems to run his race when he shows up, and I actually thought he ran really well in the Breeders' Cup last year. He lost the race at the break when Golden Pal basically was 4 lengths in front of everybody after about 10 strides. But otherwise, he's a horse who just shows up and didn't seem to show much rust from that layoff.
I like this race a lot. I do think that these short turf sprints are kind of the best race for a long layoff horse. It's just the easiest race to get ready for, I think. Um, but and he saved ground. He got through on the inside. He had a really good trip. But that being said, he was loaded the whole way. He was in the bridle, traveling really nicely, and he quickened beautifully and won easy. Even while looking, to me, I thought he looked a little bit heavy. Like he still could get honed down a little and improve. Now, if the Breeders' Cup were back in California, I think it might he might be a horse to really give a lot of credence to. I don't know if they're going to Keeneland, but that's a completely different kind of course than he'll ever have run on. But he is. I think he's really. This was not much of a field either. I don't think, but he's a nice
Yeah, he was
horse.
4 to 5 for a reason. I pulled up the worksheet that I sent to my assistant, and as I guessed, it's going to be right around the 120 mark. But I don't want to limit him to that. He has run a little quicker when he had to. He's been pretty versatile. So yeah, he's a horse who's won down the hill a few times. So he's one worth keeping an eye on. I would imagine we're probably not going to see him again before the Breeders' Cup, but you never know. Maybe they'll want to get one more race in.
I don't know. I don't think there's a turf sprint for him at the Santa Anita like a prep. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
forgetting one, but
I
maybe
can't
I don't know.
remember, and they can always make one up if they
Yeah.
want to. Uh,
Well,
yeah, it's
that's
not
true.
like most of these are graded races anyway in the turf sprint division. So it'll be interesting. I think he's a real player though if he shows up. That about covers it for Del Mar. It was a big race week of racing at Saratoga, of course, closing weekend. And I still have a hard time saying this, but the Jockey Club Gold Cup was run at Saratoga. I don't remember if this was the second or third time, but it's still fairly new. But we saw a good rebound effort from Olympiad. What'd you think about what you saw from him?
It made me mad. Um, because I loved him to beat Life is Good. I thought he was a better horse and that he was just going to outstay him. So I don't know why he didn't. I mean, and then after that, then I'm really on the wrong foot because I couldn't find any reason for him to run like that other than he was over the top after going steady for so many months. But I don't know. I mean, I think I. How does this number compare to his previous numbers, Greg? Is it right in the same
Yeah, it's
range?
about the same as all but his race at Churchill, where he kind of ran off the screen that day and put up a big number. I forget, I think it was in the 130s. But he ran.
Yes, and that seemed significant, right? Because he had done it so easily before. He just did what he had to do, and then when their faster pace came up, he was able to accommodate that. So that's what gave me such hope for the
Me as
horse.
well. We were in the same boat. I picked him that day. I thought he would beat Life is Good, and for whatever reason, he came up empty. I know I saw some tweet stuff, and I kind of rolled my eyes, and then I saw you made the comment. People were saying that it was too hot or something like that for him that day. But I never pay attention to that stuff. I mean,
I mean, can he not handle the heat? Was it cool the other day? I mean, I don't know. A bit, they're horses. They can't tell us, can they?
no, they can. And I'm a guy, I am not a big bounce guy. But if you think he bounced in the Whitney, I guess you could say he bounced back here. But he still didn't run back to
I
that Gloucester
suppose
figure.
he had such a good break though between races. I don't
Yeah,
know. He
that's why
might
I say
have.
I'm not. He had almost 2 months off in between. I think it was.
Exactly.
So yeah, well, no, it was only a month before the Whitney. Uh,
It was
yeah,
okay. Maybe he did bounce then. I mean, maybe that was just the one too many.
yeah, it could have been because he sure came back well. He didn't run that 130 type speed figure we saw, and
Well, he couldn't have, right, with the
yeah, that
49.70
is very
half
true.
mile.
You get it. A lot of people don't get that I talk with how important pace is to speed figures. We often talk about pace as far as the result, but it definitely has an effect on speed figures. I know we build it into
Well,
our game.
exactly. You can only run so, especially on dirt. There's only so fast a horse can run coming home. I mean, that how they go in the early and middle portions is puts a it creates a range of outcomes. Let's put it that way.
So that's actually a good lead in to the Flower Bowl. But before we do that, let's just kind of close up. Olympiad, any chance at all in a race like the Classic?
Oh yeah, he's got a chance. I mean, but he needs Flightline to be just a regular excellent horse, not like a generational superstar. Um, I will also mention. I mean, I thought First Captain ran okay considering where he had a terrible trip. I don't understand the ride at all. Why they didn't go forward with that horse right away when he's shown like he can at least somewhat keep up in 7/8 races, and then he just slogged. It was just ridiculous. He had no chance.
You
I,
could say that about 25 rides a day in New York. I wish
no sense. And I thought Luis Saez's calling card was supposed to be his aggression. Like he always puts the horse in the right place.
he usually
American
does.
Revolution just he's American Revolution is not as good as Olympiad. That's all there is to it. He's okay, but he's topped out and he is what he is. Olympiad, if he has a good couple months, And if Flightline doesn't, I absolutely think he could win the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, it's for American Revolution. I don't think he's come back the same horse. I don't know what sent him to the bench. I mean, if people remember, he beat Olympiad pretty handily in the
Yeah,
Cigar
but
Mile.
Olympiad was got like, I mean, Bill Mott is still talking about what the hell happened with that ride in that race. He
Right.
said he thought he was going to finish last at the 3/16 pole, and then suddenly he's closing in on the leader.
Yeah, that was a bizarre race. But I just my point, I don't think American Revolution is quite the same. He was off for a while, and I don't think that was by design. I imagine something else.
Well, yeah, he was supposed to run in New York. He would have gotten started a little sooner, and then the race didn't fill. But if you watch him go, he is very unusual animal, and maybe he put some stress on some things that don't want to be stressed.
And last thing before the Flower Bowl, I like that you said that about Olympiad because as dominant as Flightline was, there are still, I would say, the horse of the year races wide open. Any number of probably 4 or 5 horses could win the classic and all be horse of the year with a win. And I would assume Olympiad is one of them. So they have every reason to run in that race.
Oh yeah, I think he'll be pointed to it for sure. All being well, they're not gonna. They're not gonna. Like you could imagine life is good, like going a different route, possibly, because Flightline's going to be breathing down his neck, and any concerns about him staying, which there ought to be, are accentuated by the presence of that other horse. Whereas, he could win the dirt mile and look really good doing it. But Olympiad will, if he's healthy, I'm sure he's going to be in the classic, and you know
Yeah. And
Flightline is not. I mean, you made a great point. Like he did this thing this one time at the end of a series, but I mean, let's look at the entirety of his career. It's not like he runs every 3 weeks and we know exactly what he can reproduce over and over.
right. They're flesh and blood beings. I hate for connections to skip races because of one horse. You'd never know when a horse isn't going to show up. Even if they show up
Correct.
physically, you don't know that they're always going to show up. So I would imagine most are going to give it their best shot with the top connections. Even Life is Good. I mean, I don't see the point running in the dirt mile sprint. I mean, what's the point? He's already won a Breeders' Cup race. He could be horse of the year. Why pass it up?
Exactly. That's how I would look at it, but I'm not
So
Windstar
back to the
Farm.
pace. Yeah, back to the pace discussion. Going to skip around over the notes I sent you a little bit since it came up. I think we have to talk about the pace in the Flower Bowl. Not that it was a huge surprise that there wasn't any pace. We could all see that on paper going in, but the trip that the heavy favorite Warlike Goddess had, I personally thought it was ridiculous. I know some others out there are defending Joel Rosario, and Joel Rosario is a great rider. He may even be the best rider. He's certainly a top 3 rider. Everybody makes mistakes. I personally thought this was as bad a ride as he could give this one.
Yeah, moreover, I would say this about Joel Rosario, and I don't know him personally at all, but just in my dealings with him, he seems like a really good person too, and I think that he cares. And yeah, I have no like I always am happy when he does well, but he can at times for a guy who is capable of just genius rides and gets so much out of these horses and is so good. There are times when you're just like, what is happening here? Because I mean, don't get me wrong, and you saw this too. I'm sure it was in a tricky spot the whole time, but when you're on a horse that's good, you make you're supposed to be able to do different things. You make your own luck, you make your own race by not letting yourself be dictated to the extent that you can't do anything until it's too late. Now what that would have looked like, where exactly and when he could have done that, I don't know, but I'm not the jockey. That was his job to figure it out. Maybe it happens at the 6 furlong pole, like long before, because you know how slow they're going, and you shouldn't care if you like get hung out a little wide or if you have to make 2 moves, because it doesn't matter. If you're in the clear, you're going to win.
Right. She was clearly the best horse, even coming out of the race. This is one of the crazy speed figure situations that only come up on turf where the overall speed figure for the race, if you only went by final time, I gave it a 98. It was ridiculously slow because they crawled. There was no way to make up the time later on in the race. We boost that because of pace up to the winner, got a 117, which is about what she runs in her good races. We're like Goddess still got a 124. It was just a matter of the trip. And to me, it's not like she drew the rail. So I don't know why Joel found himself on the rail. That is like the last place I would have went. And when they passed the wire the first time during the race, I actually tweeted out that Joel Rosario is asking for trouble.
Exactly.
He may, yeah, he may get away with it because she's that good, but it turned out she's just not quite that good. And I think if you look on Trackers, she actually finished the last quarter mile in sub 22 and nearly got there, lost the neck. But as you said, the horse can only run so fast. He was basically running top speed
No,
the
she
last
you
quarter
can't
mile.
she could not you can't finish any faster on grass than that.
Right. And it was just no way. So, my thoughts coming out of this race, and we'll see if you agree, is basically Virginia Joy, Costania, any of those other horses, they're not going to win Breeders' Cup or be factors in it even. Probably won't even be in the field. We're like Goddess. I'm putting a line through this, and I personally think she's still a very strong contender, particularly since it's being run at Keeneland this year.
Yes.
A course that she should handle fine. It's not California, and
No, she has favorable experience over a very tricky course, and she'll be in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Depending on who comes, she might even be a playable price.
yeah, no doubt about it. And she's the kind, to me, she has the talent, and now would depend who shows up. But if she was against just American males, I would take her. And there was even talk of her running in the race at Saratoga. I forget which name.
Absolutely, I think she can beat Gufo. I'm sorry, Gufo.
Yeah,
I
I
love
do
you,
as
but
well. And who knows that she would have had pace that day, that's for sure, because I think Tribuven was in there. He's always pace. And yeah, maybe they just picked the wrong spot, looking for the easy spot. But maybe that one would have been easier for her. But I don't think she lost anything in defeat personally.
not to me.
A few other races from Saratoga we want to talk about. I guess we'll start with the other two grade ones from the weekend for the 2 year olds. One we saw yesterday, I don't have the official speed figure done yet, but Forte is going to get about a 110, I would guess. And I actually do that speed figure, but I haven't done it. But I glanced and it looks like a very easy day. So 110 seems very reasonable to me. And it was quite a rebound from what we saw from him last time.
Well, it's Olympiad all over again for me. I mean, I thought that his maiden race, his debut win was he was the best East Coast 2 year old performance I saw. And like in his last race, I'm looking at these horses and all the races they've run. Like, there's no way this horse can lose. And he just laid an egg. He was awful from the start. I don't know what happened with him that day. I haven't ever seen an excuse, but he ran this race like I thought he was going to run in the last race, and he just trounced Gulfport. I mean, I, I think the shine is off Gulfport a little bit. I think people were a little too high on him after his early season exploits. I did think he was more than just a flashy like June 2 year old, and he's good. He's a good horse, but at 7/8 he was no match, and maybe that's some distant limits. And as for the rest of the field, I mean, the less said, the better, probably.
Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about outside the top two. I did think Betters got a little carried away. I thought it was a good sign that Todd Pletcher brought Forte back right away. Normally, if something went wrong, you wouldn't see him back this. I say right away. It's sad that 6 weeks these days is right away, but that's the
No,
game we
but you're
play.
right. The way he ran, it looked like we'll see him next year kind of race.
Right, see him at Gulfstream in the Holy Bull or something like that. But
Right.
yeah, it didn't happen. He showed up. He ran good. And I'm not sure what happened with Gulfport. I didn't think it was a great sign. He was definitely trying to get out on the turn.
Yes, he
At,
was.
at first, I thought maybe it was the rider, and maybe he did encourage him a little bit, trying to show him the horse to his outside, but he overdid it. But yeah, it wasn't pretty. So not sure what the deal is with him. Just a lesson I hope people learn, and it's one I learned many times over as a young speed figure maker, is that these 2 year olds, as the distances get longer and the horses mature, you want to avoid the flash, the horses that look flashy those first couple times out. And if you've done that, you've had the opportunity to get paid twice, beating Gulfport. And like you said, it's not that he's not a good horse; he is a good horse, and he's actually probably improved his speed figure every single time out. But he's also a horse who was ready to go first time out. He was cranked up. He ran good. He did it again at Churchill, and he was just more fully developed. And some others are catching up, in my The other race for the 2 year olds came on Sunday in the Spinaway, which is also a grade one. After this performance, though, I'm not sure for how much longer it should be a grade one. Uh, and I say that jokingly because the speed figure just did not come back very strong. The winner only got a
I can
90.
see that.
I haven't
Yeah.
had a
Ooh.
chance to look at the buyer. I would guess low 70s at the best. Um,
Huh.
but
I'll
I
look
can
right
look it up.
now.
Okay, yeah, you can look it up.
I mean, it just, I mean, people were talking, some people were talking about Wonder Wheel like she was this super promising filly. I'm like, I mean, I didn't see it with her at all. And she was such a short price. I just think it was, I mean, the thing is, if you look at California too, this division is barren at this point.
Yeah, we definitely haven't seen the big speed figures. If I feel like maybe there was a Todd Pletcher one that ran fast
Yep,
early
money's
on.
gold, but
Right.
she's out.
Yeah,
That
we
was an early race at Monmouth, and she's out.
right.
The
And
one that I like is the Asmussen filly, and I'm not going to be able to remember her name now, but
I won't
um,
if you're looking to me for help, you're looking in the wrong direction.
77 buyer was the was Leave No Trace. She won 76, 77.
Okay, so maybe a little higher than what I have it, but still it's not going to turn any heads. Visually, the race looked good by Leave No Trace. I mean, she had won pretty easily. She actually came from off the pace, going 5.5. So that is a good sign. One of the things I look for when they're stretching out the 7. But I don't have a whole lot to add about this one. I think we're going to see better fillies come along pretty darn quick, and you almost have to because it's hard for me to imagine horses like this are going to win the bigger races. The Frizette, for example.
Wait till you see the field in the Del Mar debutante. I mean, it's not going to look much better. Grand Love is the Asmussen filly's name.
Gotcha. I'm gonna have to put that one in my stable mail. I'm terrible with 2 year old names, but I will definitely put that in our DRF list
Yeah. So
where I get the
anyway, yeah.
emails.
Congratulations to the connections, and it was a big win for this trainer. But to me, I would tend to think that these horses are not going to be. I hope they're not like Breeders' Cup winners. We'll see.
All right, so just a few more we want to talk about at Saratoga before we wrap it up. I already mentioned the Hopeful was run on Monday, which is yesterday for us. But I thought there was a pretty interesting race earlier on the card. And similarly, I don't have the speed figure, but I can tell you it's going to be a quick one, probably in the upper 120s. And that was Emirati winning the Bernard Baruch, just a grade three. But he looked pretty darn good to me. I watched this race live, and you kind of thought maybe he was just being a rabbit for the other Chad Brown horses. And,
Yeah.
there was only one other win. I say only with, a little bit of sarcasm there. But he did have the even money favorite in here. But it's not like Emirati went out and set a crawling pace. I thought he went pretty
Not on
quick.
that course.
Yeah, he went pretty quick for that Saratoga course. And he just had plenty left. It's not like he ever really got challenged at any point in the race, and maybe they found something new with this horse because he looked really good to my eye, and the speed figure is going to back that up.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like there was quite a bit of give in the ground. Um, and I mean, the raw fraction is pretty impressive. I mean, the other horse, the Muage, who was even money, he was abysmal. But and looking back at his form, he's got okay soft ground form. I don't know what was wrong with him. I didn't like him in that race, and that price seemed insane to me. Um, so Emirati, let's see, in 2019, he went on soft once at Saratoga in the same race. In the Brook, he didn't run well at all. And his races showing from England are on good to firm. So it's hard to see that coming. And he's 7. You wonder how much upside he has. But I guess leading was the one thing that changed. And since he ran the race of his life, I guess he's a horse that wants to go to the front. I don't know.
Yeah, it certainly can't hurt to try again. The one pause I'd have for concern, even with the big speed figure, is the race was basically a merry-go-round. There was very little position changing at all throughout. Um, just third to second and second to third. That was about it. The rest were just far back.
Yeah, and Winner's back. That's the one that got passed. He was getting tired in his first race in more than a year.
Yeah,
So
so I would view it with a little bit of skepticism. City Man, he held his good form that he's shown. He's a horse who's kind of an in and outer. You never know when he's going to pop, but he did run 2 good ones in a row, so maybe he's worth keeping an eye on firmer ground. Last one, I guess we'll talk about. I'll quickly mention the prior rest, then we'll do one more. The prior rest was run on Friday. I know we had to talk about before they throw so many races at you at Saratoga, we couldn't even remember what day it was run on. But Marcus was correct, and that it was run on Friday. And we saw Wicked Halo, who's been on kind of a roll since she came back this year. She didn't start out the year well, but once she found the winner's circle that first time, she seems to keep going. Ran a 115 speed figure here, and pretty solid effort, I thought.
what is that? I mean, that makes her what? Like can she win a grade 2 with that?
Yeah, probably against older horses. I mean, this was obviously just for 3-year-old. She's not going to have that luxury much longer, if at
That's a
all.
bad
Yeah,
division,
it's
though.
not.
And there are no very few. Like there are not many good older female dirt
No,
winners.
there are not. As I mean, Hot Peppers, I think, was the favorite in here, coming out of she a second place in the test. I think most of us would agree that the test was not the test that not even our father's test. It was not even our younger selves test. It was a pretty weak division. Monterey didn't show up, so I guess you would have to say that Wicked Halo has moved to the top of that division. I just don't know if that really carries any weight.
Wow, that's something to think about, really.
Yeah, I mean, she was a good 2-year-old, if
She
memory
was.
serves. Yeah, she won one of the big races at Saratoga, one of the graded stakes. Didn't have finder form early in the year when she came back, but she's just okay. I wouldn't be too excited about her stepping up to face some of the older fillies that we've seen recently. I forget the Chad Brown we saw in the Ballerina, who kind of ran off the screen. We've seen some other pretty decent ones. So.
Olive, something olive, sweet olive.
Good night, Olive. Does that sound
There you
right?
go. Good night, olive.
The horse with no past performance line or no
Good
time.
night, olive. Yep. And sneakily, old Frank's Rockhead is in absolutely roaring form right now.
Yes, she is a filly who I usually rush to the windows to bet against, and
Me
just
too.
over,
What happened to
over and
her?
over. Yeah, and then I did it again, and I actually had one of my rare cashes on Kamari, and I actually needed a shower after cashing that bet because I knew Frank's Raquette was the best horse, which I don't often say after she
I
loses.
know.
But
The
that
world
day
was
seemed to
turned
be.
upside down, and it was 2 bad trips in a row for her.
Yeah, and she really seemed to turn a corner to me that day. She showed fight, and then I saw her live at Charlestown. And granted, it was Charlestown, but there were some pretty
I
good
don't
fillies
care.
in
She
there.
was good.
She was very, very good. She got a very good final time figure. The pace was super slow because nobody wanted to challenge her. She was 1-5 or whatever that day, but she finished like a rocket train, and I do think she's a serious player.
Me
We
too.
talked about her last week, and we're probably spending too much time on
Did
the
you talk
field.
about Society last week?
We did. Is that the Steve Asmussen?
Yes, the 3-year-old filly at Charlestown, who also nobody had noticed, was pretty brilliant.
Yes, and actually, she's probably the fastest on the speed figures. Now that I think about it, definitely faster than Wicked Halo, but she can't pass her in the division because she hasn't really won a big race.
No, but
If they
if you gave
matched
me a
up, I'd
choice,
bet her.
line them up together, I'll take Society.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So
You
one
all right?
more
You had
race.
one more good horse you wanted to talk about.
Yes, one more good race, and then I'm going to let you go and get back to eating deep dish pizza or whatever it is you do there in Chicago. And
If I do
that was
Virginia.
that was Annapolis, who showed up in a 3-year-old turf race, just like we saw in the Del Mar Derby. And I feel like a knucklehead because the name's escaping me. The Saranac. And Annapolis went off at a pretty short price, and he made that look like value to my eye. What did you think?
Well, it was a glorified workout. I've always liked this horse. I thought he was the best 2-year-old male turf horse last year. He didn't get a chance to show it because he got hurt. Um, and then he just didn't quite stay. Nation's Pride is a good horse in a mile and 3/16. Is he Breeders' Cup mile material? Depends on who shows up. I mean, the older males are not. There's nothing to be afraid of, really. I don't think. Um, and he is. I mean, I'm not even counting the soft ground race in the Penn Mile, which is
No.
just forget it even happened. The horse that beat him, this horse is like 4,000 times better than. No offense, wow, what a summer, but um, he's on a good pattern. He's just now gotten back, and cutting back a half furlong is only going to help this horse, I think. And also having a target's going to help him. I mean, he just won on the lead here because he went slow, and there was no one who could come close to him. But with a fast pace, if he handles that turf course, which is an open question, he might be a little bit interesting because he's going to be a price in that race.
Yeah, and he's fast. Unlike we talked about the Andy horse out at Del Mar, slow down Andy.
Oh yeah, that's not even a comparison in my mind. This is a real horse.
Yes, and what for me as a speed figure guy, he got a 118 speed figure. And what I found interesting, it's not one that I really could give a pace upgrade to because it would have just inflated all the other horses so much. But he actually ran a 118 final time figure after running an opening quarter mile in just 79. So this horse definitely has a turn of foot, can finish off the race. Um, it was a track that had some give into it. I didn't look up the final time on Trackist, but I don't really think I need to. He was finishing off the race for sure, and he's the 1 3-year-old of the American based ones I've seen that really looks like he could step up and compete. Particularly, he'd need the weight break that he's going to get, maybe even a little more. But as we've mentioned, we talked about the older turfers. We were talking more of the longer distance horses, but it's not like the mile division has been particularly strong either.
Well, you're going to have Santine is cutting back, um, which I mean, his two best races by far have come at Churchill on that wacky course, so it's hard to know with that. And they're talking about Count again. I mean, his race at Keeneland was his worst race of the year. I think he's just better in California. Um, let's see. I mean, um, the stretch out sprinter. I mean, I must be totally senile not to remember these horses' names.
No, but I
Who
think that's
won
kind of telling, to be honest, because I'm in the same boat.
the 4-star Dave winner? That's a good horse. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not saying there's some good, but I don't think there's any out there that we really need to be petrified of as a
no.
three-year-old.
And the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Mile right now is Modern Games, and he's a good horse. But first he has to get here, and we'll see about that. But then he's not Baid or anything. Yeah, and the Americans are just a very modest group. So the right improving 3-year-old like this, I mean, I think you're onto something. I hope this horse has a good couple
Yeah,
months.
Casa Creed is the horse you were trying to think of, and it
Thank you.
wasn't my
God.
memory that brought him back. I actually looked it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and he's a really good horse. I mean, he ran good races overseas. They were ambitious over the winter, and he ran really well. And I mean, the Jaipur I thought was a little down this year, but still 3/4 to win grade ones at 3/4 and a mile in the same summer. That's a special animal. He's excellent. But that being said, is he a top class horse? I don't
He's
think
not going to
so.
scare anybody away. And the one thing that I would note is that we always hear about the great European milers, and they're obviously very good, but Americans have had success in the mile. They seem to do better in that race than some of the longer ones. So I do think Annapolis is worth keeping an eye out. Maybe he'll run again, maybe not, but the mile would definitely seem to be the race for him. So with that said, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. I just want to thank you one more time for coming on. It was a little bit short notice, but always appreciate your insights. And as usual, you stepped up to the plate. Any last words from you?
Uh, Thank you for having me, and I do enjoy the exercise. It helps clarify things, and always a pleasure talking with you, Craig.
All right. Thanks a lot, Marcus. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Timeform US Pacecast. As usual, you can find it in all the usual places: Spotify, it's on YouTube, on the DRF channel, Apple Podcasts, all those other places David says that I usually tune them out long by then. So until Friday, when, as I mentioned, I'll be joined by Larry Comas as we handicap Kentucky Downs, where I will definitely need all the help I can get. And what better guy than the guy that sees all the races? I will talk to you then. Thanks for listening.